Shabbat Shalom. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about how we Jews are people of the book. As a Jewish adult now, Parker, you've done such a magnificent job of chanting from our book and teaching us. You've demonstrated your profound connection to the text, and I promise that's a relationship that will serve you your entire life. And just as we are a people of the book, we are also a people of the land. Our relationship to the ancient land and modern state of Israel is something we carry with us in our bones. And it's also a relationship that serves us our entire life. As your family, as your parents have done such a magnificent job of teaching you to be in relationship with Israel from such a place of love and knowing. It's the direction we orient ourselves as Jews when we pray. And every one of our holidays taps into the seasonal rhythms of Israel. Pesach is not just the celebration of our exodus from Egypt, it's also Chag HaAviv. It celebrates springtime. Shavuot, just around the corner, is not just the holiday celebrating receiving Torah, it's also the barley harvest. And then Sukkot, Chag HaAsif, the festival, our harvest festival of ingathering, where we gather the Arba Minim, the 4 species, the Hadas, the Etrog, the Lulav, the Arava, the myrtle, willow, lulav, and palm and citrus, with such specificity, as if our tradition wants us to be in deep, intimate, specific relationship with the land and its rhythms. To look out the window and not just see trees, but to be able to distinguish a maple from a pine, from a fir, from a linden. That's a linden. One of my favorite books on nature and trees, The Overstory, has a quote that I want to share with you. It's about a father taking his daughter out to get to know all of the specific kinds of trees. He wants her to have that kind of relationship with the land. And he goes a little far, but it says here, he teaches her to tell a shellbark from a shagbark hickory. No one else at her school can even tell a hickory from a hop hornbeam. The fact strikes her as bizarre. Kids in my class think a black walnut looks just like a white ash. Are they blind? Plant blind, her father answers. Adam's curse. We only see things that look like us. Sad story, ain't it, kiddo? I have one gripe with this beautiful text, which is that Adam wasn't plant blind. If you recall the story of our creation, of Bereshit, God gives this beautiful garden to the first human being, to Adam, and says, name everything in this garden. Know everything in this garden. And when Adam was alone, because it's not good for a human being to be alone, God honored that and created an Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate, another human being. But first came our relationship to the land, a knowing relationship of naming and understanding. Then we were ready for relationship with other human beings, because when we can appreciate the wonder and miracle of every living creature in this world, of the trees, of the meadows, of the natural world, then we're ready to appreciate the miraculous wonder in each and every human being. We won't be plant blind, and we won't be blind to one another either. To be a Jewish adult isn't just to deepen our connection to our sacred text, it is also to deepen our connection to our sacred land. This week, in your very challenging double portion, Behar Bechukotai, we read about Shemitah. Just like we human beings get the gift of Shabbat every 7th day, God instructs us to give the land Shabbat every 7th year, to treat it as if it too is a living, breathing organism worthy of respect, protection, and reciprocity. We read, Daber el b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, ki tavo'u el ha'aretz asher ani noten lachem, v'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat la'Adonai. Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I assign to you, the land shall observe a Sabbath of God. 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the 7th year the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, a Sabbath of God. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. Parker, you'll be in middle school soon, and at some point they're going to teach you about the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl is like the Rose Bowl, except Ohio State loses. It was a time of severe dust storms throughout the Great Plains and Midwest in the 1930s. If you look up photos, you'll see what looks like the plague of darkness in the form of massive dust clouds enveloping barns and homes like a tsunami made of earth. What caused the Dust Bowl? It was a combination of natural and human factors. Years of drought and high winds didn't help, but the real problem was we overworked the land. We overplowed and overgrazed. The Great Depression strained our farmers who exchanged native grasses that held the soil in place for more profitable crops like wheat. Wheat has a less extensive root system, which left the soil vulnerable to erosion. We never gave the land a break. We did exactly what our Torah instructs us not to do. The land never got to experience Shabbat until it revolted. And its Shabbat was at our expense. To be a Jewish adult, we need to understand our own extensive root system that runs 4,000 years deep in the desert sands of Israel. And we also need to understand that wherever we are in the world, nature is not ours to exploit. Shemitah reminds us of our sacred relationship as Jews with the land, and particularly with Israel. And relationship, the great Jewish philosopher Martin Buber famously teaches, lives in the realm of I-thou, not in I-it. Relating to other people and to the natural world as an it, as an object that exists only to satisfy our needs, is anathema to Judaism, which teaches us to see the thou, the intrinsic value and worth of living creatures as ends in themselves, even seemingly inanimate land. Because if we recognize and appreciate the thou-ness of trees and meadows, birds and beasts, of forms and creatures that don't resemble us, how much more so will we come to appreciate the thou-ness of our fellow human beings who do? Buber writes, "Then as I contemplate the tree, I am drawn into a relation, and the tree ceases to be an it. Relation is reciprocity." This book is my third favorite book on trees. The Torah's my first. Second is The Giving Tree, a book we've all read, a book that maybe our parents or grandparents read to us, a book that maybe we've read to our children. I know that I have. In it, Shel Silverstein, Jewish, tells the story of a boy's relationship to a tree who loves the boy and just wants the boy to be happy. "Come, boy," says the giving tree. "Come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." But the boy, he grows older, and he's not content to spend the day playing with the tree anymore. His needs, like all of us, grow greater as we get older. "I am too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" The tree offers the boy apples to sell, branches from which to build a house, its very trunk with which to build a boat to get away for a while. The boy takes and takes and takes until the giving tree is reduced to a stump. And the tree was happy, but not really. After many years, the boy returns an old man. "I am sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give you." "I don't need very much now," said the boy. "Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, "well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down and rest." And the boy did, and the tree was happy. We are all this boy. We all need to take and take as our needs grow greater and greater as we get older. But there's something that's always struck me about this book, which is that the boy always remains the boy. We were talking about names. He doesn't get one. It's the boy his whole life. And I think there are two reasons. One, because we can read this, of course, as a parental love, as a mother giving and giving and giving. And to the mother, to the loving parent, it doesn't matter how old you get, you'll always be that little boy who climbed up the tree's trunk and made a crown out of its leaves. But there's another, darker explanation, which is that so long as we only relate to the world in the realm of I-it, then we remain the boy. We remain the child our whole life. We don't mature and grow into what is the Jewish adult mentality of I-thou, of living in relationship with the land and with fellow human beings. It's your bar mitzvah, Parker, a day about mitzvot and responsibility, a day that celebrates your transition from boyhood to Jewish adulthood. You're not the boy anymore. Maybe to your parents, maybe to those who love you and will always see you that way. But knowing the way you treat everyone with such decency, respect, and genuine care, I think you stopped being the boy a long time ago. Behar is about relating to the land and to our fellow human beings Jewishly. It's about understanding and appreciating the interconnectivity of all God's creatures and our responsibility toward one another on this shared precious earth. But as a Jewish man, you're ready for the harrowing warning that comes next. I wish your bar mitzvah could only be joyous, but current world events and your second portion, Bechukotai, take us to a darker place. Bechukotai lays out the blessings should we follow God's laws, as you explained so beautifully, and also the terrible tochecha, the rebuke, the curses, the disasters, a combination of human and natural, that would happen should we neglect God's laws. Should we exploit the natural world? Should we exploit one another, failing to appreciate thou-ness? Then comes plague, pestilence, famine, and desperation so severe we read the single most troubling verse in Torah. Ve'achaltem basar b'nechem uvasar b'notechem tochelu. You shall eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. The tochecha warns of enemies prevailing over us, of our being uprooted from our promised land and scattered among the nations, so that, and this is the great bitter irony, the land left in ruin and desolation finally gets to rest because we're not there to overwork it. Az tirtzeh haaretz et shabtoteha. Then shall the land make up for its Sabbath years throughout the time that it is desolate and you are in the land of your enemies. Then shall the land rest and make up for its Sabbath years. The land, when pushed too far, will exact Shabbat at our expense. But here's the thing. The tochecha isn't inevitable. It's not a prophecy or prediction. It's a warning. How will humanity, how will we choose to treat one another in this world we share? There are two crises that are reaching a breaking point together simultaneously. We are facing both a climate crisis and an anti-Semitism crisis. In a way, both stem from the same thing, a refusal to live in the realm of I, thou, a blindness to the intrinsic value and worth of living creatures as ends in themselves. The Dust Bowl was a plague of darkness so thick it could be touched, that enveloped our world and made it impossible for us to see each other clearly. Anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, works in much the same way. So that a young terrorist here in America, on the streets of our nation's capital, could brutally murder two young staffers of the Israeli embassy in cold blood, departing an AJC, American Jewish Committee, event hosted at the Capitol Jewish Museum. Because they were Jewish. Because Yaron Lishinsky at 30 and Sarah Milgram at 26 dedicated their lives to strengthening the Jewish people and our Jewish homeland, Israel. They exemplified what it means to be land people. Yaron was born in Israel to a Christian mother and Jewish father, and after moving with his family to Germany at a young age, he made Aliyah as a teenager. Following his IDF service, he earned his degree in International Relations and Asian Studies at the Hebrew University, specializing in Japanese studies, because as Rabbi Hal mentioned in his speech at the Jewish Federation Vigil yesterday, we are so many, hundreds, was it thousands? So many gathered in shock and anger and in mourning, Quote, he wanted to build bridges between Israel and other countries, especially in Asia. He always sought to broaden his understanding of the world, to see new perspectives, while an ardent defender of Israel. In Yaron's own words, I'm an ardent believer in the vision that was outlined in the Abraham Accords and believe that expanding the circle of peace with our Arab neighbors and pursuing regional cooperation is in the best interest of the state of Israel and the Middle East as a whole. To this end, I advocate for interfaith dialogue and intercultural understanding. He had just purchased an engagement ring for Sarah and had planned to travel to Israel this Sunday, where he was going to propose to her. Sarah grew up in Kansas City, in a suburb, a former Hillel student leader at the University of Kansas. In her own words, she wrote, "My passion lies at the intersection of peace-building, religious engagement, and environmental work. My diverse experiences, including facilitating insightful discussions on geopolitics in Israel and Palestine as a Jewish educator, and researching an array of environmental topics in India and Central America, reflect my commitment to fostering understanding between different peoples." As a teenager, Sarah saw her high school vandalized by swastikas. Quoting Rabbi Hal's speech again, perhaps that moment prompted Sarah to begin her path to change the world for the better. Sarah helped organize events that prompted cooperation on issues like water scarcity between Israelis and Palestinians, and was deeply committed to building a more peaceful and sustainable world. She worked on reforestation and clean water. She began her work at the embassy shortly before October 7th and had devoted herself to supporting the families of Israeli hostages, playing a central role in gathering testimonies from women about the horrors of October 7th. To quote a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, the same anti-Semitism that she made it her mission to combat is the one that so tragically brought an end to her life. Someone could commit such a brutal and hateful act of terrorism right here on our own soil. Someone could be so criminally ignorant of the Middle Eastern landscape that he would uproot one of its native grasses, the Jewish people, from our ancestral homeland. I did it for Gaza, he said, when the very two people he murdered, young in the prime of their lives, were those most committed to bridge building, understanding, and peace. That's the Great Depression of it all. That's the dark dust storm enveloping our nation and our world, bigotry and hate, which blind us from seeing the interconnectivity of all God's creatures and our responsibility toward one another and to our shared precious earth. In a way, it is a realization of our Torah's darkest verse, Ve'achaltem basar b'nechem u'vasar b'notechem tochelu. War, terrorism, consumes our children. Our brave Israeli brothers and sisters of the IDF, our children and grandchildren fighting Hamas terrorists to protect the land and bring our hostages home. Up-and-coming ambassadors and peacemakers ambushed by a hate-filled individual perpetuating Hamas's genocidal aspirations here in our own country. The toll of a war we didn't want and didn't ask for has been especially severe on our children and on their children. As we try to eradicate this hate from the world, when the 12 spies return from scouting out the promised land, 10 report back, Eretz ochelet yoshveahi. It is a land that devours its inhabitants. These words feel all too true now more than ever. But there are 2 spies motivated by hope and by faith. 2 who try to appeal to the rest of us and to speak to our moral imaginations. Tova ha'aretz me'od me'od. It is an exceedingly good land. Yaron and Sarah were 2 of the most promising young leaders, like the 2 spies who come back and say it's an exceedingly good land, whose vision of Israel should remain our guiding light through this plague of darkness. When we learned of the excruciating news that the Bibas children, Kfir and Ariel, along with their mother Shiri, were brutally murdered on October 7th, Rabbi Alex said something that always stuck with me, which is, we can't let it be that that we bury their bodies, that they are only bodies we bury. They must also be seeds we're planting. How do we carry on their vision? How do we make sure it doesn't die with them? How do we relate to the land and with one another in the realm of I, thou? Shabbat shalom.